So we're here today talking with Dan Pembroke, recently come back from Tokyo from the Paralympics, where he won an absolutely phenomenal gold with a Paralympic record of 69.52, which was even more impressive because it was in horrendous rain, torrential weather conditions. So I bet, Dan, you must be really super pleased about that. And it also was 3 meters more than your European Championships best. Yeah, also brings you right up in the overall rankings, never mind for the para categories, but you're right up there in the overall rankings. So huge achievement. So we're really chuffed to be able to speak to Dan. So Dan is a para athlete. He competes in the F13 category, which is a visually impaired category, and has retinitis pigmentosa. Hopefully I said that right.
Yep.
And so Dan, previously you competed in able-bodied games a few years back, and then suffered an injury, so didn't make it to the Olympics. And then with deteriorating eyesight and your injury, you took quite a substantial break and have only recently come back into the sport. So just tell us, like, how are you? How are the Paralympics? How was Tokyo? What's it like being back in the sport after such a break? Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, I come back into the sport quite fresh from that large break, and I've done a lot within that large break, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, going to the Paralympic Games in Tokyo was just a phenomenal experience for me. I mean, it's the first time my first games, biggest competition I've ever been to. Even though there weren't any crowds there, the actual stadium itself and the Japanese people, the volunteers, just made everything so smooth and so supportive. And when I got into that stadium and I, just looked up into the night sky, just saw the darkness and then all these lights shining down onto where you're competing. And just that alone just makes your heart just like beat 100 times faster. And then that really kind of revved me up for the competition. And yeah, on that third throw, came down, was almost swimming in the rain, but I managed to come down, plant that left leg and unleash a massive throw. And that got me the Paralympic record, 69.52. So yeah, I'm ecstatic about that.
Yeah, quite rightly. Absolutely brilliant achievement. So what's your enduring memory going to be? Is it of that throw, or is it sort of a broader memory of the games?
I think obviously the performance side of things, it's great to be throwing around that 70-meter mark again, like I did back when I was in my able-bodied career, sort of pre 2013. But also, I think the Paralympics carries another message, and that is to inspire other generations and other people coming into the sport with the same condition as I have, or, through any other condition or disability, to achieve something in sport is a really meaningful thing, and it brings a lot of good feelings to yourself and to your self-esteem.
So what's it like doing sport now compared to when you were competing in the able-bodied categories? And I don't mean just in competition, I mean just for you in your life and how that's impacted you and what it brings you.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with RP, retinitis pigmentosa, when I was the age of 6. And at the age of 6, my eyesight was pretty much as good as anybody else's eyesight. But the condition slowly worsens and it gets worse and worse and worse, and it constricts my vision. So my vision gets kind of nearly every year, it gets a little bit narrower and narrower. Okay, it's called tunnel vision. So back in sort of 2012 and prior to that, I was just starting to see the differences in my eyesight. But, and I was able to see the conditions around me, and I just had a little bit of difficulty seeing at night. But in my little break away from athletics, post 2012, I went traveling around the world, and to make the most of my usable eyesight. But then, it got to the stage where my eyesight was a little bit too bad, and I then returned back to the UK to try and pick up javelin throwing again. And I noticed some differences actually when I was training then, because when I was running down a runway, I'm looking forwards, but because of my constricted vision, I can no longer now see the line. So I'm not sure how close I am to the line. So that was one difficulty that I had to overcome. And I'd done that by actually counting my steps when I run. So I actually do 9 forward steps and 7 crossovers. And you do lots of patterning in your training prior to a competition to make sure that those numbers are correct to when you're in a competition. And obviously you move the distance of the runway back depending on how big the competition is. So this has been my longest run up, because obviously when you're really into the competition, your adrenaline is higher, you're running faster, and so you just need that little bit extra room.
So it's those like tiny little practical things that are actually huge impact and a massive importance, that then you need to work with in addition to the standards of javelin throwing and the technique that every athlete would have to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's also with RP, because the condition is always evolving, you have to always evolve and adapt to the things that you're doing. So something that I would have been able to do 2 years ago, now I have to do slightly different, or I have to use a torch, or I kind of shuffle my feet along the floor in dark sort of situations to just make sure I'm not tripping over anything. So this, you're constantly adapting, and when I walk into a room, I can't see the whole room in its entirety. So as soon as I go in there, my eyes are scanning the whole room. My brain remembers where everything is. So and you do all this subconsciously, because it's a slowly deteriorating condition. So you learn to adapt very well, and it becomes a skill that you learn, just inherited by the condition.
Mm. And one that we could probably all benefit from, to be honest, for different reasons in our lives, I guess. So in some ways, like a life skill too. So does sport make life harder because it's something else that you've got to adapt and navigate and work at, or does it make life easier because it gives you that freedom and focus? And
well, it's a double-edged sword, really, because you are on one side being incredibly dedicated. Everything is going into that performance to try and throw the implement as far as possible. And so there's a lot of time, dedication, sacrifices made, just like any other athlete. But I think because it's so meaningful for myself, that being on that runway and throwing your best and achieving your best gives you a great satisfaction. So that's great. I love doing that, and I think the payoff is more than worth it.
Yeah. So, and how was that when you were a kid growing up? What role did sport and training have in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but I mean, I wasn't very good at any other sport. I wasn't good at team sports, literally, because I couldn't, like, say rugby, for example. Your players are on your side. So as soon as I got given the ball, I would just run forwards and didn't know where the rest of my teammates were. So it was like all or nothing. So I think I was definitely built for an individual sport. And then in PE in school, we had like an athletics tryout day. So we tried all different events. And I picked up the javelin, and I was pretty good at it. And I was like 3rd best in the school just in that one day. And I really kind of wanted to kind of pursue it because it was the first sport that I was any good at. And so I just went to a club, which was Windsor, Slough, Eton and Hounslow Athletics Club. in Thames Valley. And yeah, I just literally started wanting to throw things a long way. And with the help of Ashley Fox, who was the coach there, you know, he was really great to get me into the sport. It was fantastic. And then my dad kind of took the reins, and he was a javelin thrower in school, so he already knew a little bit. And yeah, my dad literally went total professor on the whole thing, and he studied so hard. It was like he was in university almost. And yeah, he spent literally every working hour of the day, yeah, trying to make me a better thrower. And you know, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. But I think, like, getting back to the question, what does my condition do for me? Back then was basically, I didn't have too many symptoms in my sort of early teens. They were very, very slight symptoms. So I got into athletics and just started that, and I was very active. So my body was healthy. I was eating healthy. And normally with this condition, like the less active you are and the more unhealthy things you do, the quicker your eyesight deteriorates. And when at the time of my diagnosis at the age of 6, they told my mum and dad that at the age of, you know, 25, 30, that your son may be totally blind. And here I am today, and I'm in the F13 category of parasport, which is the least visually affected athlete. And, you know, I'm totally functional by learning to adapt to my surroundings. And it's about having a positive mindset to be able to let yourself adapt and not just give up when you, you know, get a hurdle. And I think that's what sport has done to me, because when you start training, obviously you hit those barriers all the time, every time you go training, and you train your body to work through them. And it's not just your physical body that's working through them, it's your mental ability. So I think, again, subconsciously, I've transferred that kind of mindset onto my disability or my ability.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that sounds like awesome advice for, you know, like a young person or a parent, or even an adult that's sort of suddenly had something happen that is similar to you, of sort of how you adapt and use your abilities in order to, you know, thrive and flourish in your life and in what you've been given to you. I mean, is there anything else that you would say to someone who is in that kind of condition or situation?
I think, you know, life is tough, and life is tough for everyone. You know, and some people get it worse than others. But again, that adaptation kind of aspect is what's most important. And the kind of, I mean, if something bad happens to you, obviously you're going to feel upset, and it's important to take that time to absorb that negative thing, but also then kind of have the cognitive ability to say, right, okay, well, this has happened. Do I want to feel like this for a long time, or do I want to start doing something that's going to make me feel better? And okay, that's very easy for me to say, but I think actually just thinking it through in your mind, you know, you have the ability to change your life right now by doing something positive. Just one thing. That one thing will maybe inspire you to do another positive thing. So then you have 2 positive things. So you have a lot more positive things in your life. And all of a sudden it starts to spiral upwards. Okay. And then you attract positive people, positive situations, and positive opportunities. And I think that's kind of how I live my life. And I've found it to be very, very good, especially when I was traveling around the world. I got to do some incredible things, just being in the right place at the right time, and kind of, yeah, that positive aspect of being in that mindset got me in those situations. So it sounds corny, but just being positive.
Yeah. No, and you know what? It's actually so simple, but then some of the most impactful things in life are simple.
Yeah, it's basic stuff.
Yeah, but it works, right?
Yeah, sure does.
Evidently, because you're standing there, sitting there, having achieved what you've achieved. So clearly it does work very well. So yeah, no, that's really cool. So you're quite open about this as well. So because some people find it hard to talk about disability, whether that's because they're affected themselves, and are maybe awkward about that, or people that have no experience of disability either themselves or in their family and friends, and then feel awkward about how they're supposed to tackle it, what they're supposed to think, how they're supposed to react. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, through my teenage years, as I was sort of coming to terms with my condition, I used to kind of hide my condition and didn't really tell anyone about it. And then as the condition worsened, obviously I was adapting the way that I was doing things and things like that. But obviously these adaptations over years become things that are normal for you, but not necessarily normal in society. When I go into a room and it's full of people, like I have to look everywhere around, right? And I'm like looking for people that are coming up to me to shake my hand or to say hello. It's very hard for me to read somebody's body language. So like for instance, somebody would come up to me who I've never met before, or maybe I've met them before, and they come up to me and say, "Hey, how you doing, Dan?" And they put their hand out to shake my hand, and I'm looking at them, yeah, not too bad, and I've totally just left them hanging. And this used to happen a lot, and now it doesn't happen so much because I'm more open to people about what I can and can't see. So the people that do know me, they know that I'm not going to be able to see their hands, so they just sort of like put it out into like my field of vision and say, "Dan, I'm shaking your hand," or they sort of grab my hand first. So I think actually being very open about your condition is the first key to moving on and not being embarrassed about your condition. Because let's face it, most of us are going to want to help each other. So if you there and you'll say, "I've got a vision impairment," and somebody says, "Oh, that's ridiculous, what you want about," or starts to discriminate you, this person is really not worth it. So they're not even worried. No point worrying about that person. They're a bad person. So just get on with it. And the people that are going to I kind of accept the way you are just going to accept that and be your friend because of that. I kind of don't know where I was going with that, to be honest. Tongue tied. I need some water.
But effectively, the more open that we can all be about it, and I suppose if I were to come up to you and not know anything about your condition, then I could also be open and sort of acknowledge that there's a difference there, and then just get on with it rather than sort of stepping around it or feeling awkward.
Exactly, because it can come off a bit weird. Just imagine this, right? So if you come up to shake my hand and you don't say anything, I don't say anything, you leave with an impression of me as this person's rude,
Yeah.
Whereas if you kind of say right, sorry if I don't shake your hand or anything like that, or maybe you initiate the handshake first, so if you're meeting somebody, you put your hand out first, so there is not that kind of awkwardness.
So they just have to grab it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it's their choice to leave you hanging or not.
Unless you meet someone else with RP as well, and then you're both
mate, imagine that. We'd just be there, just like hovering hands around,
like in your hands. Everyone would be looking at you, going, "Why are you waving your hands in front of your face?"
Yeah, and I think that brings on to the second point. You've got to kind of have a laugh with it. You know what I mean? Because it's not a great thing that you've been given, the ability not to be able to see totally fully. But if you can learn to laugh about it a little bit and laugh about yourself, I think you'll make the whole journey a lot smoother, and also make other people around you more comfortable to be able to ask you questions. If you're very serious about things, then people are not going to be as open. And like we say, if you give that vulnerability about yourself and you talk about your condition, it opens other people's minds as well, and they will open themselves up to you, and that's where good friendships are made. So yeah, that's the advice that I'll give.
I love it. I think that really works for me.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Definitely. Okay, so going back to javelin, so you talked about your experiences at school and how your dad really helped you, and so now you're back in your training after having had your break traveling. And so what does sessions look like for you? What does your training week look like? What's your absolute smash it session that you come away buzzing from? And what's that like?
Well, the buzzing sessions haven't happened quite yet because, like I say, I'm new into the sport. So after every session, I come away feeling absolutely awful. But yeah, I mean, it's been a quite steep curve coming into athletics again, and I'm 30 now. So, I'm not the sort of 20-year-old athlete that I used to be. My brain still thinks I am, but and I try and train as hard as I used to when I was 20 years old. But it does need that bigger recovery and that bit more of attention to technique, making sure I'm not getting injured. At the moment, I train 6 days a week, like twice a day. I have my Sundays off. And so, yeah, literally, in the winter, it's a lot of conditioning sessions. So a lot of long, slow duration training, like running, high reps of low weight. And then towards the end of the winter, coming in towards the season, then I'll increase my weight training, get more strength behind me, a bit more mass. And then into competition phase, then I'll be lifting heavy weight, just maybe 1 or 2 reps, maximum intent, and to getting a bit more speed into my training. But with that, I also do a lot of conditioning. So a lot of boring sort of physio exercises that we all know but and hate to do, but are very good for us. So I do a lot of that, especially now I'm a bit more of a mature athlete. I need to make sure that all those little muscles, these little connective muscles that I'm using when I'm throwing to stabilize my body, to make sure that they're all strong as they can be. And or when I come down to plant that left leg to throw, I don't break things. So it's about building the building and making it as strong as possible.